I didn't tell my daughter about the $350,000 in royalties my husband left me. 3 days after Daniel's funeral, Melissa walked into my kitchen with a clipboard and said we needed to talk about my future. I simply nodded and poured her coffee. That evening, after she left, I opened the envelope Daniel had hidden in the stereo cabinet and made a call to his lawyer. The funeral had been on a Tuesday. By Friday morning, Melissa and her husband Mark were sitting in my living room with papers spread across the coffee table. Daniel had been gone exactly 72 hours. "Mom, we know this is hard," Melissa said, smoothing the creases from a real estate brochure. She'd worn black to the funeral, but today she wore navy, close enough to mourning, far enough to mean business. "But this house is too big for you. 4 bedrooms, those stairs, all this yard work. Dad would want you somewhere safe." Mark nodded, his hand already reaching for a folder thick with retirement home brochures. "We've done the research, Helen. There's a wonderful community in Oakville. They have activities, meal service, medical staff on site 24/7. I looked around the living room where Daniel and I had spent 40 years building a life. The morning light came through the bay window exactly as it always had, catching dust motes that danced like memories. "I need time to think," I said. Melissa leaned forward. "Mom, we can't wait too long. You're grieving. You're not thinking clearly. And honestly, the bills on this place, the property taxes, it's going to drain whatever savings Dad left you." Mark added, "We're trying to help you. At your age, you need family making sure you're protected." I was 66 years old. Daniel had been 68. We'd planned to have another 20 years together, maybe 30. Instead, I got 3 weeks' notice, a cardiac aneurysm that struck him while he was polishing his beloved Mustang in the garage. One moment he was there, the next, a hole in the world where he used to be. "I'll think about it," I repeated. After they left, I sat in Daniel's workshop. He'd been a songwriter, not famous, but successful enough. The walls were lined with gold records from artists who'd recorded his music, most of them gathering dust. His guitar sat in the corner, waiting for hands that would never play it again. I went to the old stereo cabinet and found the envelope exactly where he'd told me it would be. Years ago, during one of those late-night conversations couples have when they can't sleep. The envelope was labeled in his familiar handwriting, "For Helen, when you need the truth more than comfort." Inside were 3 items. The first was a letter. "My love," it began. "If you're reading this, Melissa has already started pushing. I know our daughter. I've known for years what she'd become, or rather, what Mark has made her believe she deserves. I'm sorry I can't be there to shield you, but I've left everything you need to protect yourself." I read the letter 3 times that night, my vision blurring with tears that wouldn't fall. Then I read the second document, a contract showing his songwriting royalties would continue paying out $350,000 annually for the next decade. Then I read the third document, a property deed to a warehouse on the other side of town with a handwritten note, 7 cars, 7 years of love. They're yours now. Don't let her turn them into $signs. Then I called the lawyer whose number Daniel had written at the bottom of the letter. His name was Mr. Liu. He'd been expecting my call. "Mrs. Avery," he said gently, "I'm so sorry for your loss. Daniel was a remarkable man. He came to see me 2 years ago to set this up." "2 years ago?" I whispered. "He knew something was wrong 2 years ago?" "No," Mr. Liu said carefully. "He told me he just wanted to be prepared. He said Melissa had changed since marrying Mark, and he wanted to make sure you'd be protected when the time came." On Monday, Melissa came back. This time she brought Mark, and a woman she introduced as our family lawyer. "Mom, we've been thinking," Melissa said. "Maybe you shouldn't live alone at all, not even in a retirement home. What if you moved in with us? We have that finished basement. It has its own bathroom. You'd be with family." I imagined myself in their basement in the suburbs, listening to their footsteps above my head, eating dinner at their table when invited, trying to stay out of the way of their real lives. "That's very generous," I said. "And about the house," Mark added quickly. "We could manage the sale for you. I have financial expertise, and Melissa knows the market. We'd make sure you got every penny, minus a small fee for our time, of course. Family rates." "Of course," I echoed. Their lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman with perfect hair, slid papers across my kitchen table. "This is just a power of attorney, Mrs. Avery. It would allow Melissa and Mark to handle the sale on your behalf, manage the proceeds, make sure your finances stay organized. Given your age and recent loss, it's really just sensible planning." I looked at the papers. I looked at my daughter. She had Daniel's smile, but none of his warmth. When had that changed? Or had it always been there, hidden beneath the surface of family dinners and holiday cards? "I need to show you something first," I said. I went to Daniel's workshop and returned with a photo album. Inside were pictures from 15 years ago. Daniel standing proudly beside a cherry-red Corvette he'd just finished restoring. Another photo showed him teaching a young Melissa how to change oil, both of them covered in grease and grinning. "Do you remember this?" I asked Melissa. She barely glanced at the photos. "Dad's car hobby. Mom, what does this have to do with anything? We're talking about your future, not some nostalgia trip." "Your father loved those cars," I said quietly. "They were a waste of money," Mark said. "Honestly, if he'd invested that time and cash properly, you'd have a lot more to live on now." I closed the album. "You're right. Let me think about these papers. Give me a week." Melissa's smile tightened. "Mom, we really think you should act quickly. The longer you wait, the harder this gets. At your age, procrastination isn't wise." "A week," I said again. After they left, I called Mr. Liu. "They're moving faster than Daniel predicted," I told him. "Are you ready to proceed with his plan?" he asked. I looked around the house. Daniel was everywhere and nowhere, his coffee mug still by the sink, his jacket still hanging by the door, his absence so loud it drowned out everything else. "Yes," I said, "I'm ready. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why Daniel prepared all this, you need to know how we got here, and how Melissa became someone I barely recognized." That first night alone, after Mr. Liu's call, I sat at the kitchen table with Daniel's letter spread before me. The paper still smelled faintly of his cologne, something woodsy he'd worn for 40 years. I made myself read it slowly this time, letting every word sink in. "My love, if you're reading this, Melissa has already started pushing. I know our daughter. I've known for years what she'd become. Or rather, what Mark has made her believe she deserves. It started small, remember? 5 years ago, when they bought that house they couldn't afford. Melissa called asking for a loan of $50,000. You wanted to give it to her. I said no. You thought I was being cruel. I was being careful. The loan became $80,000, then $120,000. Each time, Mark's business ventures failed. Each time, Melissa looked at us like we were her safety net. Not her parents, but her backup plan. I watched her stop asking about my music and start asking about my contracts. I watched her calculate. And Helen, I watched you make excuses for her because she's our daughter, and you can't help loving her. But love doesn't mean blindness. 3 years ago, I started preparing. Not because I wanted to punish Melissa, but because I needed to protect you. The royalties will take care of you. $350,000 every year for the next decade. That's $3.5 million, Helen. Melissa can never touch it. It's structured through a trust that pays directly to you, and it dies with you. No inheritance clause. The cars are in a climate-controlled warehouse at 2847 Industrial Way. The security guard's name is Marcus. He knows you're coming. Those cars aren't just metal and chrome. They're every Saturday I spend in that garage, choosing restoration over rounds of golf with Mark. They're the distance I put between myself and a son-in-law who only saw dollar signs when he looked at my life. Marcus has been paid through 2030. The cars are insured. The titles are in your name only. And Helen, the house. I hired an inspector 2 years ago. I know about the foundation. I know about the electrical system. I know about the property tax reassessment coming. That house is a financial trap waiting to spring, and Melissa doesn't know it yet. My final advice, take control of your life now. Don't let guilt make your decisions. Melissa made her choices when she married Mark. You don't owe her your security to fix their mistakes. I love you. I've loved you since the day you walked into that coffee shop in 1979 and spilled your tea on my sheet music. I'll love you wherever I am now. Protect yourself. Live freely. And when you drive one of those cars down a coastal highway with the windows down, think of me. Forever yours, Daniel. I folded the letter carefully, my hands shaking. He'd known. For years he'd known. And I'd been blind. I remembered the day Melissa and Mark came over, 3 years ago, asking for money again. We'd been sitting in this same kitchen. Mark had spread his business plan across the table. Some app development startup that needed just a small investment to get off the ground. It's a sure thing, Daniel, Mark had said, his smile too bright. We're talking about potential returns of 500%, maybe 700%. This is the kind of opportunity most people never see. Daniel had listened quietly, the way he always did when he was really paying attention. Then he'd said, "No." Just like that. One word. Melissa's face had gone white. "Dad, you're not even going to consider it?" "I've considered it," Daniel said. "The answer is no." "Why?" Mark demanded. "Because you don't believe in me? Because you think I'm not good enough for your daughter? Because I've watched you burn through 3 opportunities in 5 years," Daniel said calmly. "Because Melissa had a career she loved as a teacher before she married you, and now she's working part-time at your mother's real estate office because you keep promising your businesses will take off. Because every time I give you money, I'm not helping. I'm enabling." Mark had stormed out. Melissa had followed, but not before saying, "You're choosing money over your own daughter." After they left, I'd turned to Daniel. "Was that really necessary? She's hurting." "She's learning," he'd said. "Or she's not. Either way, Helen, we can't keep catching them every time they jump." I'd thought he was being harsh. Now I understood. He'd been building a wall between their choices and my future. The royalty contract was thick, dense with legal language. But Mr. Liu had highlighted the important parts in yellow. Annual payment, $350,000. Duration, 10 years from date of death. Beneficiary, Helen Margaret Avery. Non-transferable. Inheritance clause. None. Payment ceases upon beneficiary's death. Contestability. Trust structure prevents legal challenge by heirs. Daniel had written songs for 30 years. Some became hits. Most didn't. But the ones that did, the ones still playing on classic rock stations, still licensed for commercials and movies, those kept paying. And he'd made sure every penny would come to me and only me. There was a sticky note attached to the contract in his handwriting. "You always said I spent too much time with my guitar. Turns out that guitar is taking care of you now." I pressed the note to my chest and finally let myself cry. The warehouse key was small and silver, attached to a keychain shaped like a treble clef. Daniel's humor, even in preparation for death. I would visit it soon. But first, I needed to understand the full picture. I pulled out the property inspection report Daniel had commissioned on our house. It was dated 18 months ago, marked "Confidential" in red letters. Foundation, major structural failure, estimated repair cost, $180,000, $210,000, electrical system, non-compliant with current code, full rewiring required, $40,000, $55,000, plumbing, original 1970s copper showing signs of corrosion, $25,000, $38,000, roof, end of life cycle. Replacement necessary within 2 years, $18,000. The total estimate at the bottom made my breath catch, $263,000, $321,000 in necessary repairs. And attached to the back was a letter from the city about the upcoming property tax reassessment. Our taxes would increase by 287%. Daniel had known this house was a trap, and he'd kept it quiet, waiting for Melissa to show her hand. I thought about Mark's earlier words. "We'd make sure you got every penny, minus a small fee for our time, of course." They didn't want to help me. They wanted to sell the house before I discovered what it would cost them if they owned it. My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. Mom, have you thought about what we discussed? We really need to move forward. The market won't wait. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I set the phone face down on the table. Daniel had prepared everything. Now it was my turn to act. Not out of revenge, not even out of anger, out of duty. To him, to myself, and to the truth he'd protected me with. I picked up the warehouse key and headed for the door. The warehouse district was a part of town I'd never had reason to visit. Industrial buildings stretched along both sides of the street, their metal siding catching the late afternoon sun. I drove slowly, checking addresses until I found 2847. The building looked ordinary from the outside. Gray corrugated steel, a small office attached to the front, security cameras mounted at each corner. A sign by the door read, "Premium Storage Solutions, by appointment only." I sat in my car for a moment, Daniel's key warm in my palm. Part of me wanted to turn around, go home, pretend none of this was happening. The other part, the part Daniel had been trying to reach with his letter, knew I had to see this through. The office door opened before I could knock. "Mrs. Avery?" The security guard was a black man in his 50s, tall and broad-shouldered, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. His name tag read Marcus. "Yes," I managed. "I've been expecting you." He stepped aside to let me in. "I'm so sorry about Daniel. He was a good man, one of the best I've known." "You knew him well?" "He came here almost every Saturday for the past 15 years, Marcus said. Sometimes he'd work on the cars for hours. Sometimes he'd just sit with them, listening to music. He talked about you all the time, ma'am. Called you his anchor." My throat tightened. "He never told me about this place." Marcus nodded slowly. "He said he would, when the time was right. Then last year things changed. He came in one day and updated all the paperwork, made sure everything was in your name, paid the fees through 2030, gave me specific instructions." He pulled an envelope from his desk drawer. "He told me if you came alone, I should give you this first." Inside was another note in Daniel's handwriting. "Helen, Marcus has been my friend and confidant for years. Trust him. He'll help you with anything you need. And Helen, take your time in there. Let yourself feel everything. I'll be with you. D." Marcus handed me a ring of keys. "Building 7, Unit C, climate-controlled, 24-hour security. You're the only person with access now." "Thank you," I whispered. He walked me across the lot to a smaller building set back from the others. The heavy metal door required 2 keys. When it opened, motion sensor lights flickered on one by one, illuminating a space that took my breath away. 7 cars. 7 pristine, gleaming works of art arranged in a semicircle like a museum exhibition. I stepped inside, and the door closed softly behind me. The first car was a 1967 Mustang Fastback in deep blue, the paint so perfect it looked wet. I'd seen this car before, in photos from when Daniel first bought it, a rusted shell on a trailer. He'd spent 3 years bringing it back to life. Next to it sat a cherry red 1969 Corvette Stingray, its chrome accents catching the light. Then a cream-colored 1958 Thunderbird with tail fins that swept back like wings. A midnight black 1970 Dodge Charger. A forest green 1965 Ford Mustang convertible. A silver 1963 Corvette split window. And finally, a pristine white 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air with red interior. Each car had a small brass plaque mounted on a stand beside it. I moved to the Mustang and read, 1967 Mustang Fastback, purchased 2008, restoration completed 2011. This was the first, the one that taught me patience. "Helen, you held my hand through every setback, every stripped bolt, every late night in the garage. This car runs because you believed in me." I moved to the Corvette. 1969 Corvette Stingray, purchased 2012, completed 2014, the year Melissa got married. I worked on this car instead of arguing with Mark about money. Every hour I spent here was an hour I didn't spend resenting my son-in-law. You understood, even when Melissa didn't. The Thunderbird. 1958. Thunderbird. Purchased 2015. Completed 2017. Your favorite color. I restored this one thinking about all our road trips, all the highways we traveled together. When you drive this, remember, we always found our way home. I moved through them all, reading each plaque, each memory Daniel had preserved in metal and chrome and love. The final plaque, beside the Bel Air, was different. 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air, purchased 2022, completed 2024, my last restoration. Helen, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I finished this car knowing I was running out of time. But I wanted you to have something perfect, something complete, something that proves love doesn't end just because a heart stops beating. These 7 cars are my legacy of love. They're yours now, all of yours. Nobody can take them. Nobody should ever try. That's when I broke. I sank to the concrete floor between the Mustang and the Corvette, and I cried. Not the silent tears I'd shed at the funeral, surrounded by people offering empty condolences. These were deep, gasping sobs that came from a place I'd been holding closed since the moment Daniel collapsed in our garage. He'd known. He'd known he was dying, or at least that time was running short. And instead of telling me, instead of making me watch him fade with dread in my heart, he'd spent his final months building me a fortress made of royalties and restored engines and legal documents that would protect me when he couldn't. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually, the tears stopped. I stood, wiping my face with my sleeve, and walked slowly around the cars again. On a workbench at the back of the space, I found 3 ring binders, one for each car. Inside were restoration logs, receipts, insurance documents, maintenance schedules, even photographs documenting every stage of each rebuild. Daniel's meticulous nature on full display. The insurance papers showed each car valued between $85,000 and $150,000. Total collection value, approximately $750,000. $750,000 that Melissa didn't know existed. I thought about her text earlier. The market won't wait. I thought about Mark's dismissive words. Dad's car hobby. Honestly, if he'd invested that time and cash properly, they had no idea. They'd calculated my worth based on a house that was falling apart and whatever savings they assumed I had. They'd made their plans, drafted their papers, prepared their arguments, but Daniel had prepared better. He'd known Melissa would come with sympathy that masked greed. He'd known Mark would push her toward the money. He'd known they'd use my age and grief as weapons to make me seem incompetent. And he'd built me an escape route paved with horsepower and chrome. I walked to the Mustang, the first one, the blue one, and opened the driver's side door. The interior smelled like leather and polish. The keys were in the ignition. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the steering wheel. Daniel's hands had touched 1,000 times. The car felt solid, real, permanent in a way nothing else had since he died. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another text from Melissa. Mom, we need an answer. We have people ready to look at the house this weekend. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I looked around at the 7 cars. 7 years of Daniel's Saturdays. 7 pieces of his soul preserved in steel and glass. I thought about Melissa's cold appraisal of our home. Mark's calculated smile. The power of attorney papers designed to strip away my autonomy. And I thought about Daniel's final words. Take control of your life now. Don't let guilt make your decisions. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and whispered into the quiet garage, Nobody is taking you from me. The words echoed off the concrete walls. It wasn't a prayer. It wasn't a promise. It was a declaration of war. They came on Wednesday morning. I was in the kitchen making toast when I heard the cars pull into the driveway. Not 1, but 3. Through the window, I watched Melissa emerge from the first car with Mark. From the second came a woman in a blazer carrying a leather portfolio. From the third, a man in his 30s with a medical bag. I took a slow breath, set down the butter knife, and went to answer the door before they could knock. Mom! Melissa's smile was bright and brittle. I hope you don't mind. We brought some people who can help. Help with what? I asked mildly. With getting you the support you need. She gestured to the woman. "This is Carol Hendricks. She's a social worker who specializes in senior transitions. And this is Dr. Philip Warren. He does geriatric assessments." I looked at each of them in turn, keeping my expression pleasant and slightly confused. "Assessments?" "Just routine," Dr. Warren said, his voice carefully modulated to be both authoritative and gentle. "Given your recent loss and your age, it's important we make sure you're managing well. Cognitive function, emotional stability, decision-making capacity, all standard evaluations." "I see," I said. Then I stepped back from the door. "Well, come in. Can I make coffee?" They exchanged glances, surprised, maybe relieved that I wasn't resisting. "That would be lovely," Carol said. I moved slowly through the kitchen, taking my time with the coffee maker, deliberately fumbling with the filters. I could feel them watching me, cataloging every hesitation as evidence. "Mrs. Avery," Carol began, settling into a chair at the kitchen table, "Melissa has expressed some concerns about your well-being. She mentioned you've been talking about moving away. To Nova Scotia?" "Cape Breton," I said vaguely, pouring water into the reservoir with slightly shaking hands. Not real shaking, performed shaking. "Or was it— No, somewhere else. Daniel always handled the travel planning." Melissa leaned forward. "See? This is what I mean. She's confused. She keeps talking about properties and cars that don't exist. Yesterday she told me Dad left her some kind of warehouse." "Did I?" I blinked at her. "I don't remember that." Mark pulled out a folder. "Mrs. Avery, we've brought some documents that will help clarify your situation. Simple paperwork that will let us assist you with managing your affairs." Dr. Warren opened his medical bag. "But first, I'd like to run a few quick tests. Nothing invasive. Just some questions to establish a baseline. Can you tell me what day it is?" "Wednesday," I said. "And the date?" I paused, looking toward the calendar on the wall. "It's March? Or is it April now?" "It's November, Mom," Melissa said gently, but her eyes were sharp. "Oh." I set down the coffee pot. "November. Of course, I'm sorry, I've been so— since Daniel." I let my voice trail off, touching my temple as if my head hurt. Carol made a note on her tablet. "Mrs. Avery," Dr. Warren continued, "do you remember what you had for breakfast?" "Toast," I said immediately. Then I frowned. "Or was it yesterday I had toast?" More notes, more exchanged glances. The coffee maker gurgled and hissed. I poured 5 cups with exaggerated care, nearly spilling one. Mark had to reach out to steady my hand. "Thank you, dear," I said. "You're Mark, aren't you? Melissa's husband?" "Yes, Mrs. Avery. We've known each other for 8 years." "8 years?" I repeated. "Time goes so fast." Carol opened her portfolio. "Mrs. Avery, I want to talk to you about care options. Melissa has found a wonderful assisted living facility where you'd have support, medical supervision, activities." "She doesn't need a sales pitch," Dr. Warren interrupted. "We need to complete the assessment first." He turned to me. "Can you count backward from 100 by 7s? 100, I said slowly. Then 93? Very good. Continue. 86. Then 70. I stopped, looking confused. 79, he prompted. Yes, 79. I smiled apologetically. Numbers were always Daniel's strength. The doctor made more notes. Then he pulled out a form. Mrs. Avery, I'm going to recommend a full cognitive evaluation at the clinic. This initial screening shows some concerning patterns: memory gaps, confusion about time and dates, difficulty with mathematical tasks. What does that mean? I asked, letting worry creep into my voice. It means, Melissa said, taking my hand, that we need to make sure you're safe, Mom, that you're not making decisions you can't fully understand. Mark spread papers across the table, which is why we brought these, simple documents that transfer decision-making authority to Melissa, just temporarily, until we get you properly assessed and situated. A power of attorney, Carol added. It's very common in situations like this. It protects you from making choices that might not be in your best interest. I looked at the papers, letting my eyes unfocus slightly. I don't understand all this legal language. You don't need to, Mark said quickly. That's the whole point. You sign here, and Melissa handles everything. The house sale, your finances, your healthcare decisions. You won't have to worry about anything. And we have a notary coming this afternoon, Melissa added. We can get everything finalized today. Then you can rest, Mom. Really rest. Dr. Warren clicked his pen. Based on my preliminary assessment, I would support this arrangement. Mrs. Avery is clearly experiencing cognitive decline, likely exacerbated by grief. She needs family support and professional care. They were all looking at me now, waiting. The trap had been set. The documentation was ready. The medical opinion was rendered. All I had to do was sign, and they'd have everything. The house, my finances, my autonomy. They'd move me into a facility, sell the property before the bills came due, and I'd spend the rest of my life in a basement apartment or a nursing home room, wondering where my life had gone. I picked up the pen. Where do I sign? I asked softly. Melissa's whole body relaxed. Right here, Mom. On this line. I held the pen over the paper. Then I set it down. Actually, I said, my voice suddenly clear and steady, my lawyer will be here in the morning. He should probably review these first. The room went silent. Your lawyer? Melissa said slowly. Yes. I looked up, meeting her eyes. Daniel's lawyer, Mr. Liu. He's been handling our affairs for years. You don't have a lawyer, Mark said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. I do, I replied calmly. Daniel arranged everything. Mr. Liu has been expecting my call. Dr. Warren cleared his throat. Mrs. Avery, a moment ago you couldn't remember what month it was. Are you certain you should be making legal decisions? I smiled. It's November 20th, Wednesday. I had toast with butter and jam for breakfast, strawberry jam. I remember perfectly, Doctor. I was just curious to see what you'd write in your report. Carol closed her portfolio with a snap. This is highly irregular. What's irregular, I said, is 3 strangers showing up at my home with predetermined conclusions about my mental state, armed with documents designed to strip me of my rights, all coordinated by my daughter within a week of my husband's funeral. Melissa stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. How dare you? We're trying to help you. Are you? I asked. Or are you trying to sell a house before I discover it needs $300,000 in repairs? Mark went pale. What are you talking about? Daniel had it inspected 18 months ago. The foundation is failing. The electrical system isn't up to code. The plumbing needs replacing. Did you think I wouldn't find out? You're lying, Melissa said, but her voice shook. Mr. Liu has all the documentation, I said. He'll be here at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. You're welcome to come back then with your social worker and your doctor and your power of attorney papers. We can review everything together. Mom, I think you should leave now, I said quietly. They left. The social worker with her portfolio, the doctor with his medical bag and his worthless assessment, Mark and Melissa, their coordinated attack fallen apart. I waited until their cars pulled away. Then I went to the phone and dialed Mr. Liu's number. He answered on the second ring. Mr. Liu, I said, it's time. I'll be there at 9, he replied. And Mrs. Avery, Daniel would be proud of you. I hung up and looked around the kitchen, at Daniel's coffee mug still by the sink, at the photos on the walls, at the home we'd built together. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. But today, I'd won the first round. Mr. Liu arrived at exactly 9 o'clock Thursday morning, carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than Melissa. He was a slim man in his 60s with silver-rimmed glasses and the kind of calm demeanor that came from 40 years of courtroom battles. Mrs. Avery, he said, shaking my hand, shall we? I'd set up the dining room table with coffee and notepads. Through the window, I could see Melissa's car already parked on the street. She'd been there since 8:30, waiting. They're here, I said. Good. Mr. Liu opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency. Let them wait 5 more minutes. It's important they understand this is your timeline now, not theirs. At 9:05, the doorbell rang. Melissa stood on the porch with Mark, their family lawyer, and, surprisingly, another man I didn't recognize. Older, expensive suit, briefcase that probably cost more than my car. "Mom," Melissa said tightly, "this is Ronald Pemberton. He's a specialist in estate and elder law." "Mrs. Avery," Pemberton extended his hand with a politician's smile. "I've reviewed your daughter's concerns, and I believe we can reach an amicable resolution today." "Come in," I said. They arranged themselves on one side of the dining table. Mr. Liu and I sat across from them. The positioning felt deliberate, adversarial. A negotiation table, not a family discussion. "Let's begin," Mr. Liu said, pulling out a folder. "I represent Mrs. Avery's interests as outlined by her late husband, Daniel Avery. All estate planning was completed and notarized prior to Mr. Avery's death, with full legal authority." Pemberton leaned forward. "We're here because there are concerns about Mrs. Avery's capacity to manage complex financial affairs. Yesterday's assessment indicated—" "Yesterday's ambush," Mr. Liu interrupted calmly, "indicated that Mrs. Avery is sharp enough to identify manipulation when she sees it. Dr. Warren's preliminary assessment has no legal standing, particularly since Mrs. Avery didn't consent to evaluation." "She answered his questions," their lawyer protested. "She was polite to guests in her home," Mr. Liu corrected. "There's a difference." Mark shifted in his chair. "Look, we're not trying to fight. We're trying to help Helen manage assets she may not understand. The house alone—" "Let's discuss assets," Mr. Liu said. He opened his folder and slid the first document across the table. Daniel Avery's royalty contract. Annual payments of $350,000 for the next 10 years, paid directly to Mrs. Avery through an irrevocable trust. The trust language specifically prevents inheritance, transfer, or contestation by heirs. Melissa's face went white. $350,000? "Annually," Mr. Liu repeated. "Total value over 10 years, $3.5 million. "That's impossible," Mark said. "Daniel was a songwriter, not—" "He wrote 12 songs that charted in the top 40 between 1985 and 2003, Mr. Liu said. 3 are still licensed regularly for commercials and films. The royalty stream is stable and legally protected." He slid over another document. "The warehouse at 2847 Industrial Way, leased through 2030, containing 7 fully restored vintage vehicles with a combined appraised value of approximately $750,000. All titles are in Mrs. Avery's name. All insurance policies name her as sole beneficiary." The room had gone completely silent. "Furthermore," Mr. Liu continued, "all intellectual property rights, publishing rights, and mechanical licensing for Daniel Avery's catalog are held in trust for Mrs. Avery. No other party has legal claim to these assets." Pemberton recovered first. "Then Mrs. Avery is quite well off. Which raises the question, why did she need her husband to set up such elaborate protections? What was he protecting her from?" "From people who see her as an asset to be managed rather than a person to be respected," Mr. Liu said quietly. Melissa flinched as if she'd been slapped. "The question now," Mr. Liu said, "is what to do about this house." "Sell it," Mark said immediately. "Obviously, Helen doesn't need it, and the market is irrelevant." Mr. Liu pulled out the property inspection report. "Because no one will buy this house once they discover what Daniel already knew." He slid the report across the table. I watched Melissa's eyes scan the first page, then the second, her expression shifting from confusion to horror. $210,000 in structural repairs, Mr. Liu said. "Foundation failure, electrical system replacement, plumbing overhaul. That's the conservative estimate." "Why didn't he fix it?" Melissa whispered. "Because he was dying," I said softly, "and because he knew what would happen the moment he was gone." Mr. Liu continued. "Additionally, the city is conducting property tax reassessments in this neighborhood. Mrs. Avery's taxes will increase by approximately 285% starting next fiscal year. The Homeowners Association also has a special assessment coming, $47,000 for infrastructure repairs." Mark was doing math in his head. I could see the calculation happening, the numbers adding up to disaster. "So the house is worthless," Pemberton said. "Worse than worthless," Mr. Liu agreed. "It's a liability. Anyone who owns it will face hundreds of thousands in mandatory repairs, triple taxes, and declining property value once the foundation issues become public record." "Then what are we even doing here?" Melissa demanded. "If Mom doesn't need the house and no one wants it—" "Daniel left a solution," Mr. Liu said. He pulled out a new set of documents. "He suggested transferring the house to you, Melissa, as a gift." The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. "What?" Melissa said. "A gift transfer," Mr. Liu explained. "Your mother signs the house over to you today. No sale, no proceeds, no split estate. Just a mother giving her daughter the family home." "Why would she do that?" Mark asked slowly. "Because," I said, meeting Melissa's eyes, "you told me I shouldn't live here alone. You said it was too much for me. You were right." "But the repairs," Melissa started. "Would be your responsibility," Mr. Liu said, "as the new owner, along with the taxes, the special assessment, and any other costs that arise." Understanding dawned on Pemberton's face. "You're trying to trap them." "I'm trying to free Mrs. Avery," Mr. Liu corrected. "She doesn't need this house. She has the cottage income, the royalties, and complete financial security. What she doesn't need is the burden of a deteriorating property or the constant pressure from family members who want to liquidate her assets." "This is insane," Mark said. "You want us to take a house that's falling apart?" "I want to give you what you asked for," I said quietly. "You wanted the house, Melissa. You've been asking for it since the day after your father's funeral, so I'm giving it to you." Melissa looked at the inspection report, then at the transfer papers, then at me. "There has to be another option," she said. "There is," I replied. "You could leave. Stop trying to manage my life. Accept that your father protected me because I needed protection, and maybe, eventually, we could rebuild some kind of relationship. Or," Mr. Liu said, "you can take the house. The choice is yours." They didn't decide that day. Pemberton asked for time to review the documents. Melissa left without saying goodbye. Mark's face was the color of old newspaper. After they were gone, I turned to Mr. Liu. "He didn't design this to punish her, did he?" "No," Mr. Liu said. "He designed it to free you. The punishment, if that's what it is just a consequence of their own choices." "What if she takes it?" "Then she learns an expensive lesson about greed, and you live the rest of your life in peace." He began packing his briefcase. "Daniel loved Melissa, Mrs. Avery, but he loved you more. And he knew that sometimes protecting the people we love means letting others face the consequences of their actions." I looked around the dining room, at the table where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where Melissa had done her homework as a child. "Prepare the paperwork," I said. "If she wants the house, she can have it." Mr. Liu nodded. "I'll have everything ready by tomorrow." After he left, I stood at the window watching the street where Daniel used to park his truck, where Melissa used to ride her bike, where a lifetime of memories lived in brick and wood and failing foundation, and I felt, for the first time since the funeral, something close to peace. I called Melissa on Friday afternoon. "Sweetheart," I said, letting my voice sound tired, fragile. "Could you and Mark come over tomorrow morning? I've been thinking about what you said, about the house, about everything." There was a pause on the other end. Then, "Of course, Mom. What time?" 10 o'clock? I'll make coffee. We'll be there." I could hear the hope in her voice. Or maybe it was hunger. I wasn't sure I knew the difference anymore. I spent that evening preparing. I wore my oldest cardigan, the one with the loose button. I didn't fix my hair properly. I made sure the house looked slightly unkempt, yesterday's newspaper still on the table, Daniel's reading glasses by his chair, a coffee cup left in the sink. Small signs of a woman who couldn't quite manage on her own. Mr. Liu arrived at 9:30 with his briefcase and a notary stamp. "Are you certain about this?" he asked. "I'm certain," I said. Daniel was certain. That's enough. At exactly 10 o'clock, Melissa and Mark's car pulled into the driveway. I answered the door slowly, as if the effort exhausted me. "Mom!" Melissa hugged me, and for a brief moment I wondered if any part of her concern was real. "You look tired." "I haven't been sleeping well," I admitted. It wasn't a lie. Mark followed her inside, his eyes already scanning the room with that appraiser's instinct. "It's good you called, Helen. We've been worried." I led them to the living room, where Mr. Liu sat waiting with documents arranged on the coffee table. "You remember Mr. Liu?" I said. Melissa's expression tightened. "Yes." "I've asked him here because—" I paused, wringing my hands. "Because you were right. This house is too much for me. The stairs, the yard, all the memories. I don't want to be here alone anymore." Mark leaned forward. "We understand. Helen, that's why we found that wonderful facility in Oakville." "No," I interrupted gently. "Not a facility. I've decided to give you the house." Silence. Complete, absolute silence. "Give us?" Melissa finally said. "Yes." I looked down at my hands. "Daniel and I bought this house together. We raised you here. It's a family home, and it should stay in the family. So I'm signing it over to you. Now, today." Melissa's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Mark, who was staring at me with an expression caught between disbelief and triumph. "Mom, that's incredibly generous," Melissa said slowly. "But are you sure? What about the repairs you mentioned, the foundation?" I waved a hand dismissively. "I may have been confused about that. Daniel handled all the house maintenance. I'm sure whatever needs doing, you two can manage. You're young, capable. You said Mark has financial expertise." Mark's chest puffed slightly. "We can definitely handle it." "But where will you live?" Melissa asked. "I'll find a small apartment somewhere," I said. "Something manageable. With the life insurance and Daniel's pension, I'll be fine." I looked at Mr. Liu. "Won't I?" "Mrs. Avery will be quite comfortable," Mr. Liu said neutrally. Melissa and Mark exchanged glances. I could see the calculation happening. The mental math of mortgage-free property, market value, their financial problem solved in one signature. "This is a significant gift," Mr. Liu said, sliding the papers forward. "I want to make sure everyone understands what's being transferred. The house, the property, all structures and fixtures. As of today's date, full ownership transfers to Melissa and Mark Morrison." "What about taxes?" Mark asked. "Gift taxes?" "The property value falls within the lifetime gift tax exemption," Mr. Liu said. "No immediate tax consequences for either party. Mrs. Avery is simply giving her daughter her home." "When can we take possession?" Mark asked. "Immediately upon signing," Mr. Liu replied. "Mrs. Avery has already arranged for movers to collect her personal belongings next week." I saw it then, the flash of pure greed in Mark's eyes. This wasn't about helping me. It had never been about helping me. This was about acquiring an asset, about solving their financial problems with my life's work. "Mom," Melissa said, taking my hand. Her voice had gone soft, almost tender. "This is so generous. Are you absolutely certain?" I met her eyes. My daughter. My only child. The little girl who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and call them sunshine flowers. "I'm certain," I said. "Your father would want you to have it." That was true, in a way. Just not the way Melissa thought. The signing took 15 minutes. Mr. Liu walked them through each page with professional efficiency. Melissa signed carefully, reading each section. But Mark barely glanced at the pages before scrawling his signature across line after line. "Initial here," Mr. Liu said, "and here, and sign at the bottom." Mark's hand moved quickly, eagerly. "This section acknowledges you understand all existing liens, assessments, and property conditions," Mr. Liu continued. "And this confirms you accept the property as is, with no recourse against the previous owner for any discovered issues." "Standard language," Mark said dismissively. "We accept." "And finally," Mr. Liu said, "this confirms the transfer is irrevocable. Once signed and notarized, the property belongs to you absolutely, with no option for return or reversal." "Perfect," Mark said, signing with a flourish. Mr. Liu applied his notary stamp to each page with methodical precision. The sound, that heavy thunk of official validation, seemed to echo in the quiet room. "Congratulations," he said. "You are now the legal owners of 47 Maple Avenue." Melissa stood and hugged me. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much." Mark was already on his phone. I heard him whisper to Melissa, "I'll call Ashley first thing Monday. We could have this listed by Wednesday. Spring market is coming. We're looking at 2.4, maybe 2.5 million easy." They thought I couldn't hear, or maybe they didn't care. "Here," I said, reaching into my pocket. I pulled out the house keys, the same keys Daniel and I had received 42 years ago when we first moved in. "These are yours now." Melissa took them with shining eyes. "We'll take good care of it, Mom. I promise." "I know you will," I said softly. They left 20 minutes later, Mark already making calls, Melissa clutching the keys like a lottery ticket. Through the window, I watched them sit in their car for several minutes, hugging each other, laughing, Mark gesturing excitedly as he talked. Already spending money they didn't have yet, already counting profits from a sale that would never happen. After their car pulled away, Mr. Liu began packing his briefcase. "The city assessment notice goes public in 3 weeks," he said quietly. "The homeowners association letter arrives in 2. The first major repair bill, the electrical inspection failure, that'll be about 6 weeks. And they can't return it," I said. "The documents are ironclad, irrevocable gift transfer, accepted as is, no recourse. Even if they tried to sue, they'd have no grounds. They signed every page." I looked around the living room one last time. The afternoon light came through the bay window, warming the hardwood floors Daniel had refinished himself 20 years ago. "He really thought of everything," I whispered. "He loved you," Mr. Liu said simply. "And sometimes love means building walls around the people who matter most, even if it means building those walls out of other people's greed." After he left, I sat in Daniel's chair and held his reading glasses. The house was no longer mine. Melissa had what she wanted, and in 3 weeks she'd discover exactly what that meant. I thought about the warehouse full of cars, the royalty checks that would start arriving next month, the lakeside cottage Daniel had purchased 20 years ago with his first big royalty payment. I thought about freedom, and I smiled. The first 3 weeks were quiet. I moved into a small apartment temporarily while I made arrangements for the cottage. Most of my belongings went into storage. I kept only what mattered: photo albums, Daniel's guitar, a few pieces of furniture with memories attached. Melissa called twice to check on me, her voice bright with forced cheerfulness. She didn't mention the house. Neither did I. Then came week 4. The first call came on a Tuesday morning. "Mom," Melissa's voice was strained. "Did you know about the electrical system?" I was having coffee on my apartment balcony, watching morning traffic. "The electrical system?" "The city inspector came yesterday. He says the whole house needs rewiring. Something about outdated circuits and fire hazards. They're saying $24,000, maybe more." "Oh dear," I said. "Did Daniel know about that?" How would I know what Dad knew? Frustration bled through her words. "The inspector said this has been an issue for years. He seemed surprised no one had addressed it." "Well, you own the house now," I said gently. "I'm sure you and Mark can handle it." Silence. Then, "Right, of course, we'll figure it out." She hung up before I could say goodbye. 3 days later, another call. This time I could hear Mark arguing in the background. "Mom, there's a problem with the foundation." Melissa's voice was tight. "A structural engineer came today. He says there's significant settling. The foundation is sinking on the north side." "Oh my." "He's saying it needs reinforcement, steel piers, concrete work, waterproofing. The estimate is $95,000. I let the silence stretch. "Did you know about this?" Melissa demanded. "I'm 66 years old, sweetheart. Your father handled all the house maintenance. I wouldn't know a foundation problem from a leaky faucet." "The engineer said someone had this inspected before, recently. He found markers from a previous assessment." "Daniel was very thorough about home maintenance," I said carefully. "Perhaps he was planning to fix it before—" I let emotion creep into my voice, as if the thought of Daniel's death was still too raw. "I'm sorry," Melissa said quickly. "I didn't mean to upset you. It's just, this is a lot of money, Mom." "I understand," I said. "These old houses can be expensive." Through the phone, I heard Mark shout something about calling a lawyer. "I should go," Melissa said. The calls came faster after that. A plumber found corroded pipes throughout the house, $38,000 to replace. A roofer discovered water damage in the attic, $11,000 minimum. Each time, Melissa's voice grew thinner, more desperate. "We can't afford this," she said during the 5th call. "We thought we could sell it and use the proceeds for repairs, but no one will buy it in this condition, and we can't afford to fix it before selling." "What does Mark say?" I asked. "Mark says—" She stopped. "Mark says a lot of things." Then came the letter from the city. Melissa called at 7 in the morning, her voice shaking. "The property taxes are tripling. Tripling, Mom. The reassessment came through. We'll owe $31,000 a year instead of $11,000. "That seems high," I said. "High? It's impossible. And there's more. The Homeowners Association sent a special assessment notice, $47,000 due in 60 days for infrastructure repairs, storm drains, repaving, tree removal." $47,000? "Yes," she was crying now. "Mom, we can't. We don't have this kind of money. Our savings are already gone from the electrical rewiring. Mark took out a loan for the foundation work. We're drowning." "Can you sell the house?" I asked. "Not in this condition. Every inspector who comes through finds something else wrong. One said the whole structure might be compromised. Another said it could take 6 months of repairs before it's even marketable. And we don't have 6 months. We don't have 6 weeks. I sipped my coffee and said nothing. "Mom," her voice dropped to a whisper, "you knew, didn't you? You knew about all of this." "I gave you the house you wanted," I said quietly. "You tricked me!" The scream was so loud I had to pull the phone from my ear. "You knew it was falling apart. You knew about the repairs and the taxes and all of it. You gave us a disaster and called it a gift." "I gave you exactly what you asked for," I said, keeping my voice calm. "You wanted the house. You said I couldn't manage it alone. You were right, so I gave it to you." "You vindictive—" She choked on whatever word came next. "Dad would be ashamed of you." "Your father planned all of this," I said softly. "He knew what you'd do the moment he died. He knew you'd come after the house. He prepared everything to protect me." "Protect you? By destroying us?" "By giving you a choice," I corrected. "You could have left me alone. You could have trusted that your father and I had planned for our future. Instead, you brought doctors and lawyers and social workers to declare me incompetent so you could take what wasn't yours. We were trying to help. You were trying to profit." Through the phone, I heard Mark's voice rising in the background. Then Melissa's voice, muffled as she covered the receiver. "I don't want to hear it right now." Then Mark, clearer, angrier. "This was your idea. You said she had money. You said the house was worth millions. You were the one who pushed," Melissa screamed back. "You were the one with the failed business and the debt and the—" A door slammed, then silence. "Melissa?" I said. She was crying, deep, gasping sobs. "He's leaving. He said I ruined us, that I was so desperate to get my inheritance early that I didn't think, that I should have read the inspection reports, that it's my fault." "Is he right?" I asked gently. "I don't know," she sobbed. "Maybe. Yes. I don't know anymore. Everything is falling apart, Mom. The house, our marriage, everything. And I can't fix any of it." "You can't return the house," I said. "The transfer was irrevocable. You accepted it as is." "I know," she whispered. "Mr. Pemberton already told us. He said we have no legal recourse, that we signed everything." "That Mark should have read the documents more carefully." Another door slammed in the background. Then Mark's voice, distant but clear. "I'm staying at my brother's. Don't call me until you figure out how to fix this disaster." "Melissa," I said. "Don't. She cut me off. "Don't say anything. Just don't." She hung up. I sat on my balcony for a long time after that, watching the city wake up. Traffic thickened. People hurried to work. Life continued, indifferent to personal disasters. My phone rang again an hour later. Unknown number. "Mrs. Avery? This is Ronald Pemberton. I represent your daughter and son-in-law regarding the property transfer." "I remember you, Mr. Pemberton. I'll be direct. My clients are facing financial ruin. The property you transferred to them requires hundreds of thousands in repairs they cannot afford. I'm calling to ask if you'll consider taking the house back." "The transfer was irrevocable," I said. "Your clients signed documents stating they understood that." "They were under emotional duress. You manipulated—" "I gave them what they demanded," I interrupted, "repeatedly, aggressively, with doctors and social workers and threats of legal guardianship. I gave them exactly what they wanted. Mrs. Avery, please, Melissa is your daughter." "Yes," I said quietly, "she is, which is why this hurts more than you can possibly imagine." I hung up. Then I turned off my phone, finished my coffee, and went inside to pack. The cottage was waiting, and so was the rest of my life. The cottage sat at the end of a gravel road surrounded by pine trees that whispered in the lake breeze. Daniel and I had discovered it 30 years ago during a weekend getaway. A small cedar-shingled house with a wraparound porch and a view of the water that made time feel irrelevant. He'd bought it 15 years later with his first major royalty check, telling me it was for someday. Someday had arrived. The moving truck came on a Saturday. I brought only what mattered: our photo albums, Daniel's guitar, the quilt his mother had made us as a wedding gift, and a few pieces of furniture that held more memories than value. The cottage was smaller than the house in Toronto. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that opened onto the living room. But it had something the Toronto house had lost years ago: peace. I spent the first week simply breathing. I walked the shoreline each morning, watching mist rise off the water. I sat on the porch with coffee, listening to loons call across the lake. I slept through entire nights for the first time since Daniel died. The grief was still there, sharp and present, but it had room to exist here without being crowded out by anger and betrayal. Marcus delivered the Thunderbird on a flatbed truck 3 weeks after I moved in. "Mrs. Avery," he said, climbing down from the cab. "Daniel always said this one was special. Said it was your color. Cream with chrome accents, just like Daniel remembered from our road trips in the 70s. He finished restoring it 2 months before he died," Marcus continued. "Spent every Saturday making sure it was perfect. He told me, 'When Helen's ready, she'll drive this one first.'" I ran my hand along the hood, warm from the afternoon sun. "Did he say anything else?" Marcus smiled. "He said, 'She'll think she doesn't know how to drive it, but she does. She just forgot she's always been brave enough.'" That evening, I sat in the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine rumbled to life, deep, powerful, alive. I drove slowly down the gravel road, then onto the highway that curved along the lake. The windows were down. The radio played old songs Daniel used to hum while working in the garage, and for the first time since the funeral, I felt him with me, not as absence, but as presence. The first royalty payment arrived in April. I stared at the bank notification on my phone. $87,500 deposited. Quarterly payment, the statement said. 4 times a year for the next decade. Financial security wrapped in Daniel's melodies. I paid off the cottage, which still had a small mortgage. I donated to the music program at the local high school. I bought art supplies, watercolors I hadn't touched since Melissa was small, and set up a studio in the 2nd bedroom. The woman at the art supply store, Patricia, was close to my age. "Just getting back into it?" she asked. "After 40 years," I admitted. "Me too," she said. "Isn't it strange how we lose ourselves in the middle of living?" We had coffee the following week. Then I met her book club. Then her friend Diane invited me to a community garden project. Before I realized it, I had Thursday afternoon painting sessions, Saturday morning walks with Patricia, and Tuesday evening dinners with a group of women who'd all found their way to the lake for second acts. Nobody here knew about Melissa or the house or the battle I'd fought. They knew me as Helen, the woman in the cream Thunderbird who painted watercolors of the shoreline and made everyone laugh with stories about learning to drive a vintage car at 66. I was just Helen. It was enough. Melissa's calls came sporadically through the spring. The first was in March, her voice hollow. We had to take out a second mortgage on our condo to cover the foundation repairs. Mark moved back in, but he barely speaks to me. I listened, but said nothing. In April, we listed the house at $1.2 million. No offers. Our realtor says we need to drop the price, but we're already underwater with the repairs we've made. In May, Mark's brother lent us money for the plumbing. We have to pay him back by September. I don't know how we're going to do that. Each call was shorter, more desperate, and each time, she never quite asked the question I knew was coming, until June. The call came at dusk. I was on the porch, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of amber and rose. "Mom," Melissa's voice was barely a whisper. "Please, I need you to take the house back." I closed my eyes. "You know I can't do that." "Please." She was crying now. "We're going to lose everything. The bank won't refinance. We can't sell it. Mark's family won't lend us any more money. We're drowning, Mom. Please, please help us." "Melissa, I know what I did," she interrupted. "I know I was greedy. I know I hurt you. I know all of it. But I'm your daughter. Please, I'm begging you." The sunset blurred through my tears. "I can't save you from the choices you made." "Yes, you can. Just take the house back. Sign the papers. We'll give it to you for free. Just take it." "The transfer was irrevocable," I said quietly. "Even if I wanted to take it back, the legal structure won't allow it. Daniel made sure of that." "Then give us money." Her voice cracked. "You have the royalties. You have the cars. Dad left you millions and you're letting us drown." "Your father left me security," I corrected gently. "Security you tried to take from me when I was grieving and vulnerable. You brought strangers to declare me incompetent. You forged a path to steal my autonomy, and now you want me to rescue you with the very assets you tried to claim weren't mine to keep." "I'm sorry," she screamed. "Is that what you want to hear? I'm sorry. I'm sorry I listened to Mark. I'm sorry I didn't trust you. I'm sorry for everything. Please, Mom, please." My heart broke, not because I doubted my decision, but because she was still my daughter, the little girl who used to pick dandelions, the teenager who'd cried in my arms after her first heartbreak, the woman who'd called me her best friend on her wedding day. "Melissa," I said softly, "I love you. I will always love you, but I can't fix this for you." "You mean you won't?" "I mean I can't. And even if I could, I shouldn't. You made choices. You have to live with them." "Then I hope you're happy," she said bitterly, "living in your cottage with Dad's money while your daughter loses everything." "I'm not happy," I said. "I'm heartbroken. But I'm also free and safe, and those things matter too." She hung up. I sat on the porch until the stars came out, holding my phone in case she called back. She didn't. Patricia stopped by an hour later with a bottle of wine. "You looked sad this morning," she said. "Thought you might need company." We sat together in comfortable silence, watching the lake turn black under the night sky. "My daughter called," I finally said. "The one you don't talk about?" "Yes." Patricia poured wine into 2 glasses. "Did she apologize?" "Yes." "Did you forgive her?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe. But forgiveness doesn't mean fixing her problems." Patricia raised her glass. "To complicated daughters and the mothers who survive them." We drank under the stars. And somewhere across the lake, a loon called into the darkness, lonely and wild and free. The warehouse felt different in July. I'd visited once since moving to the cottage, the day Marcus delivered the Thunderbird. But I hadn't stayed. hadn't let myself really be there with all 7 cars. With Daniel's presence still heavy in the air, now 3 months into my new life, I was ready. Marcus buzzed me through the gate with a wave. "Take all the time you need, Mrs. Avery." The heavy door required both keys, just like before. The motion sensors triggered, flooding the space with light that made chrome gleam and paint shimmer like water. 7 cars, 7 years of Daniel's Saturdays, 7 pieces of his soul. I walked past each one slowly, the Corvette, the Charger, the Bel Air, letting my fingers trail along their perfect surfaces. But it was the Mustang that drew me, the first one, the blue fastback that had started everything. I opened the driver's door and slid behind the wheel. The leather seat held the faint ghost of his cologne, or maybe that was just memory playing tricks. I gripped the steering wheel where his hands had rested 1,000 times. That's when I saw it. The glove box wasn't quite closed. A corner of paper stuck out, cream-colored and folded with the precise creases Daniel always made. My hands shook as I opened the compartment. Inside was a letter, sealed in an envelope with my name written in his familiar script. Beneath it, a small leather journal I'd never seen before. I opened the envelope first. "My dearest Helen, if you're reading this, you've found your way here. You've survived what I knew was coming. You've protected yourself. You've chosen life over obligation. I'm so proud of you. The first letter told you what to do. This one tells you why. I've loved you since the moment you spilled tea on my sheet music in that coffee shop. November 14th, 1979. You apologized 17 times. I asked you to marry me 3 months later because I knew you were the person I wanted beside me for every moment I had left. We got 43 years. It wasn't enough. It would never have been enough. But Helen, those years were everything. Every sunrise we watched together, every song you inspired, every moment you believed in me when the royalty checks were small and the future was uncertain. You made me braver than I had any right to be. Melissa, I'm not angry at her. I'm heartbroken for her. She became someone I didn't recognize, someone Mark shaped and molded until our generous daughter disappeared behind layers of entitlement and calculation. But I couldn't let her destroy you to fund her mistakes. The cars aren't about money, though they're valuable. They're about time. Every Saturday I spent in this garage was a Saturday I chose me, my passion, my peace, my sanity. When Mark criticized my hobby, when Melissa rolled her eyes at Dad's projects, I came here and remembered. I don't owe anyone an explanation for the things that make me whole. Neither do you. These cars are my gift of time to you, time to paint, time to walk along shorelines, time to be Helen. Not a widow, not a mother, not someone's caretaker or financial resource. Just Helen. The journal contains the full story of each restoration, every setback, every triumph, every lesson learned. Read it when you're ready, or don't. The cars exist whether you read about their creation or not. I wish I could be there with you. I wish I could see you drive the Thunderbird along that coastal highway with the windows down and your hair flying. I wish I could hold your hand one more time, but Helen, I am there, in every song still playing on the radio, in every car that starts with a rumble and a roar, in the cottage overlooking the lake, in the freedom you claimed by refusing to be diminished. Live, my love, paint those watercolors, make new friends, drive fast on empty roads, fall asleep to the sound of waves, wake up grateful, and know, everything I built for you, not out of pity or duty, but because loving you was the greatest privilege of my life. You were my anchor. Now be your own. Forever and always, Daniel P.S. The Mustang has a full tank. The highway north is beautiful this time of year. Go see what you find. I pressed the letter to my chest and wept, not from grief this time, but from overwhelming gratitude. Daniel had seen me. Not the version of me that served others, but the real me buried beneath decades of motherhood and marriage and putting everyone else first. He'd seen her and built her a fortress. I picked up the journal. Inside, his handwriting filled page after page, technical notes mixed with personal reflections. One entry, dated 3 years ago, stopped me. Melissa came by today asking for money again. Mark's latest venture failing. I said no. Helen thinks I'm being cruel. But I'm not protecting our money, I'm protecting her future. Because the day I die, they'll come for everything. And Helen won't know how to fight back. She's too kind, too trusting, too willing to sacrifice herself for others. So I'm building walls made of legal documents and restored engines. Walls strong enough to keep her safe when I can't. I closed the journal and sat in the quiet garage, surrounded by Daniel's legacy. Melissa's face flashed through my mind, tear-stained and desperate during that final phone call. Part of me would always grieve the relationship we'd lost. The daughter I'd raised, who'd brought me dandelions and called them sunshine flowers. But I forgave her, not because she'd earned it, not because she'd apologized enough, but because holding on to anger would make me a prisoner too. I forgave her, and I released her. She would have to find her own way out of the disaster she'd created. Maybe she would. Maybe Mark would leave for good and she'd rebuild herself. Maybe they'd lose everything and start over. Either way, it wasn't mine to fix. Daniel had given me 3 gifts: freedom, stability, and autonomy. The royalties meant I'd never be dependent on anyone. The cars meant I had assets no one could claim. The cottage meant I had a home that was mine alone. But the greatest gift was permission. Permission to live for myself. I started the Mustang. The engine roared to life, powerful and perfect. I eased it out of the warehouse into the summer sunshine, then pointed it north toward the highway that hugged the lake. The windows went down. Warm wind rushed through the car. I found the radio Daniel had installed, vintage Blaupunkt, perfectly restored, and turned it on. A familiar song played, one of Daniel's, a ballad from 1991 that had charted for 16 weeks. I'd been with him the night he wrote it, watching him work at the kitchen table until 3 in the morning. I sang along now, my voice mixing with his through the speakers as the Mustang ate up the miles of empty road. Sunlight reflected off the blue paint, turning the hood into a mirror of sky and clouds. Trees blurred past. The lake sparkled to my right, endless and free. I thought about Melissa in Toronto, drowning in debt and regret. I thought about Daniel, somewhere beyond reach, smiling at the woman I'd become. I thought about the cottage waiting at the end of this drive, and the painting half finished on my easel, and Patricia's invitation to dinner tomorrow night. I thought about how Daniel's letter had begun. If you're reading this, Melissa has already started pushing. I know our daughter. He'd been right about everything. The truth had mattered more than comfort. And with Daniel's truth, his careful preparations, his unwavering love, his final gift of freedom, I'd finally found peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of something stronger, a life that was wholly, completely mine. I pressed the accelerator. The Mustang surged forward, powerful and sure, and I drove into whatever came next, free, protected, and finally home. Thank you so much for listening. If this story touched your heart even a little, please tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing the places these stories travel, and it truly warms my soul to read your comments. And if this one moved you, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.